Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash.
Chris,
That there,
can I just stop you quickly there? I just want for the world to know that this is episode 18. It's always been episode 18. There was never another episode 18 that might have got stuck somewhere in a horrific computer accident. This is episode 18, and any rumours that there was another episode 18 should be absolutely disregarded because this is episode 18.
exactly. There was never an 18 before.
No, no,
Lies.
never.
Lies.
Shame
So
because it was our
this
best episode ever. Fuck it.
So this week we are not breaking down, because we're going into it massively in depth because we don't want to spoil it for you lot, so you can read it. But we are going to do a episode on 1602.
A Christmas
But
present for you, wasn't it, Chris?
no, it was what I got pre-Christmas with my bonus.
Oh, yeah,
from
that was
work.
it. That was it.
But before we go into 1602, it is that time to get into our dirty, miserable, wet reading corners away from the world.
I've just
Wherever it looked like on
realised.
Sunday.
I've just realised that he looks like he's urinating. Like in retrospect, he looks like he's in that corner having a drunken wee, doesn't he?
A little bit. Just a little
Yeah.
bit. So, Sed, what have you been reading this week, my boy?
Well, my reading this week has been predominantly what we're going to talk about on this show. It is 1602. So I will cede the floor to you for this week because I don't want to go into that. I don't want to go early doors on our main topic of the evening.
So my reading corner this week has been Visions, which again, I'm not going to go too much into because we're doing a fucking show about it next week. So,
and if it looks like we haven't changed clothes in a week, then you see the magic behind the camera that we may be actually recording them back to back. Yeah.
But I will just say this about 1602, about Visions. Fuck me, it's good. You'll find out
I
more.
can't wait to find out more, but I'm really glad that you've given that as a heads up because I know I said it before, and I know it was something I got you, wasn't it? But
Yes.
There was a bit of a selfish get you because I thought it's nice. It's something we can talk about on the show, but it is something going right the way back to our top fives. Something I love, and it's nice to hand someone something you love. However, it is always with that fear of going, oh, what if they say it's shit? But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So we will go into 1602.
In fact, it's a bit of a let's get in a time machine, isn't it? Because we are actually going back to 1602. The title very much is that the time scale that we're going to be going to. We're going in the Wayback Machine to see some familiar characters in an unfamiliar setting.
Yes, so this is a 8-issue run by the wonderful Neil Gaiman, which as soon as I saw that it was written by Neil Gaiman, I was like, my ears pricked up, and I was like, I'm intrigued by this one.
Well, I think when we mentioned him on other shows, I think we sort of said, like obviously very, very well known now. I think, or probably more known now for his books and for things that have been turned into TV shows. But I think probably up to this point, and for a lot of comic book fans, will forever be remembered as the writer of Sandman, which is again widely considered one of the best comic series of all time.
Which I've never read.
But weirdly enough, it might be something that we can look at for a future episode because I have tried to read it a number of times, and I'll be honest, I've never really got on with it. And not that I think it's bad. I think I can see it in there, but it's just never hugely clicked with me. And actually, I do have an idea for a top 5 coming up of kind of our dirty little secrets, the things that we think as a comic fan we probably should have read that maybe we haven't. And that Sandman would be in and around that, but I've got a lot of dirty secrets, so maybe it won't. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's something we go for going forward because, as I say, it is considered one of the greatest things. And for me, and I can't remember, but I don't think pre this Neil Gaiman had done much at all with Marvel characters. I mean, maybe a one shot or smaller bits, but I think this is kind of his first big Marvel series, I think.
Was this pre his Eternals run?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty
So
sure it was.
I know obviously the Eternals run that he does is held in some regard. So yeah, I wasn't sure if this was pre or post that. Um, but yeah, so see, as I said, I love him as a author and a creator of stuff. You know, I go like Coraline, Good Omens. Yeah, there's so much good shit that he's done, and I'm just like, all right, let's see what he's doing. And then when I read what the concept was they are actually in 1602, and it is not, oh look, we've taken them from 2020 and put them in 1602.
Here's
It's no,
Spidey in his costume on the side of a castle. Yeah, it's not
yeah,
that.
it is actually these the known characters, but they're 1602 versions. So like when you start it, you first meet Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, Queen Elizabeth's physician, and a little tinker of magic, and Sir Nicholas Fury, the Queen's spy. You know, so they are set for the time that they should be in. And as soon as I started reading it and saw that was what they were doing with it, I was in. I was like,
Well,
I'm in for this
as I
because
say, contextually around that, like as you say, the naming conventions are more of its time, isn't it? But I couldn't help but feel like it was everyone had the name that their mum would use if they were being told off. Everyone's name got extended out to its fullest usage, whereas I've probably been used to Steve Strange, Nick Furies, and things like that. Whereas, yeah, it felt like for a lot of reading this that everyone was about to get told off by mum at some point. And as
what
you say, you get things like Sir and things like that put in because they are. I'd say they all are to a large part. A lot of them are in the court, and not only the court of Elizabeth, but the court of James. And we get to see other kind of notable things like the Spanish Inquisition and a
yeah.
little bit of popiness in there. So they are, albeit not the heroes that we necessarily have seen them before. Most of them are playing a very important role in the story that's about to play out.
Yeah. So the base of what's going on at the beginning is we are in 1602, so there are the Spanish Inquisition and there is the witch trials, but they're not, you know, just hunting witches as such. It's witch breeds,
Yeah.
which we will go on in a bit more in a little
Did
while.
you, you know, what I said about like the names pulling me out a little bit because it was the names their mum would use. Did you, and this potentially depends on like your comedy upbringing, did every time it mentioned the Spanish Inquisition, you want to go, no one expects a Spanish Inquisition like Monty Python? Yeah.
Yes.
It's tough, isn't it, to get through something where it's got kind of an iconic punchline behind it.
Yeah, and also going on at the same point is there's the Knights Templar. So basically, they hear that there is a magic weapon that the Knights Templar are holding, and Count Otto von Doom is trying to get it. So Fury sends the blind minstrel, Matthew Murdoch,
Being told
to
off by
go
his
and
mum.
get it. AKA Daredevil, to go and get that. My favourite little nod is Fury's little assistant and squire boy, Peter Parquois.
Yeah, again, I was quite interested because for me it was Parquois. I don't know why. Peter Parquois was how it was in my head, but yeah, like you get that little variation, don't you? Kind of on the surname for him, and introduced very early doors with a spider kind of approaching him, shall we say? Much obviously like we got for the origin, and not to spoil too much, but spiders appear relatively regularly throughout the series, just floating oh so very very near to him, don't they?
Yeah, but no, not biting him.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, at certain points, it's almost for comedy reasons, not, like people kind of go, oh, there's a spider there, take that away, or
But so the first sort of issue is that they're trying to get this thing from the Templars. So it's going to be a great weapon that can save everything. And we see that there is a set of assassins trying to kill the Queen. And they basically are trying to make sure the Queen doesn't get assassinated because they don't want King James to come down.
no.
We then get the big plot point for it, which is where we see the people from the New World with what was her face? Virginia and Rojak, her giant Indian bodyguard, that are coming to basically ask for some help for the New World. And she is quite interesting, as she can shapeshift.
Now, I mean, not to go too spoilerific here, but if I'm understanding it right, she is the only one the only one of the main characters, let's say, that doesn't have an allegory in the Marvel universe, because she is actually based off of the firstborn child in the New World, isn't she? Like that's where kind of, and I think that's probably quite an important thing to set out about this 1602. Is we keep saying it's set in 1602, but you've got characters who are named the same as some of the heroes we're used to in the modern world, and to a degree showing similar characteristics and powers. But this has true historical characters and historical elements to this, doesn't it? I mean, when Gaiman's writing this, I think like he has a love for that era clearly, and has a knowledge of it at the very least, and wants to sort of kind of, I guess, ground this fantastical story in some semblance of what was actually happening. I kept wanting to call her Virginia Wade, though. I don't know why. I know because like the Virginia Wade was a tennis player, but God, like every time I read it, I was like, it's not Virginia Wade. She's a tennis player.
So I can't remember if it's before this or after this when we first get introduced to the Inquisitor.
I think it's around this time. I mean, like there very much is kind of a bit of a period here in this part of the story where I guess we get introduced to the players, the people who will have wider roles, and yes, the Inquisitor comes in and around this part,
and you see him burning Angel. I can't remember what they changed his name to. He's the one that I can't remember.
No, I can't remember either.
But basically, this version's Angel. And
it's laid out, isn't it, quite heavily that this one of the main sort of tenets of the Spanish Inquisition laid down by the Pope is to find and burn witch breed, as they are, I guess, anti-god. They're an abomination to the Lord himself.
Yeah, so
and clever picking Angel as the first one, because I know it's something that's been done in other stories, but I mean, for those who haven't seen like Angel in the comic books, but certainly as he's portrayed here, he is a blonde-haired white dude with angel wings. That is what he is, and I think strategically picking him as the one you first see that they want to burn.
Yeah, and you are also introduced to the Inquisitor's two friends, Vonda, who's clearly Wanda, and Pascal, who's clearly Quicksilver. So it's like, ooh, so the Inquisitor has his own witch breeds. You see they save Angel and take him back to England, where he is met by Carlos Javier.
yes. Sorry, this bit I did find a bit of a clunky renaming.
AKA Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
Who has surprisingly, a sanctuary for witch breeders.
Yeah,
Um,
gifted witch breeds.
yes. So, as you probably have worked out by now, the witch breed are mutants, and this is where we get the X-Men in 1602 form.
And when we say X-Men, going back to the jumping on points for X-Men one, we're talking original X-Men, aren't we? This
Yeah.
is Angel, as we've seen, Cyclops, Beast, Jean, Marvel Girl, spoilers, and Iceman
Yes.
in their race. And again, for me, it was quite nice that they went with the original X-Men, because I think you could have easily gone for more popular X-Men that come later on. Although this is the first time I kind of wanted to pick up on the art, because this is drawn by, it's Andy Kubert, isn't it? I always get confused with if it's Andy or Adam, because they're brothers and they both draw. But yeah, it's Andy, and
2 seconds.
he he
Yeah,
is
Andy.
kind of a well-renowned comic book artist. I think he certainly at certain points and around this time is considered one of the biggies. You know, like you get a big writer and then you're going to do a big story. He's one of the ones that will be on the list. Strange enough, like one of the things that I found really, I kept focusing in on it, is when he drew Beast, and this is non-blue furry Beast. This is Hank McCoy white apish kind of Beast, but he didn't half draw him like he draws Wolverine. And there was a few panels where I'm going, is Wolverine in this story now? But then twigging, no, it was actually a picture of Beast. But that's not a slight on it. You know, I think he's a cracking artist. But yeah, that was just one of the ones where, and I think that in my time I've just read quite a few Kubert, or read a few ones where Kubert has drawn Wolverine, and there's certainly some similarities between his Beast and his Wolverine here.
Yeah. At this point, Queen Elizabeth is assassinated,
The
and
Queen is dead.
King James is on his way to take the throne. We have a big section at Count Von Doom's, who is Doctor Doom.
Doom. A handsome
So,
Doom, though, isn't it? They
very,
establish him as a very handsome man.
who seems to have a penchant for having superheroes in his basement, as we find out that he
Who
has
doesn't?
the Fantastic Four from their ship, the Fantastic.
And they're kind of mooted about a couple of times, and that's the thing about this. I mean, this is an 8-issue series, isn't it? I mean, we read the collected edition, but there are lots of breadcrumbs laid along the way, aren't there? So there's a few mentions of Reed and the Fantastic, and that kind of mystery of going, whatever happened to them? Like they kind of went on a voyage and were never seen again, and things like that.
Yeah.
So they do, you know, he does get you to the plot points, the plot beats along the way.
There are lots of little mentions of things in there that you're just like, where's this going? Because who is it that Murdoch's or with when he's
Black Widow, Natasha.
Black Widow, yeah, Natasha. Yeah. Again, because all he says is Lady Natasha, and you're like, is it? Is it definitely? Are we? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of it that's just subtle little nods to characters that we know and love in this new world.
Yeah.
This is the point where I'm not going to go too much into what really happens, because you're going to start shitting on the big twists and the stuff that comes that is there.
Well, and I think, you know, like as we've said, you know, this has a quite a grand cast, and I think some of the cast that you get to see is better to be seen as and when it happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's not who you see in the first two maybe three issues. Like, yeah, they'll play a part all the way through, but it's kind of not over for those links to Marvel characters that you know and love, and it is a lot of the biggies, isn't it? Like as we said, there's like Doctor Strange, there's Nick Fury, there's nearly said one that was a spoiler, which didn't, to good, but Peter Parquois. You got Doctor Doom, you've got like the
The
Fantastic
Fantastic
Four, you've got the
Four,
X-Men. So
X-Men.
yeah, it is hitting like a lot of the big range of the characters, as you said, Wanda and Quicksilver.
So
So yeah,
so without spoiling bits that come into it, because as I said, we are not going to go into detail on this because I feel this is one that you need to take the surprises and the twists and turns as you go through it.
yeah, it feels like the
Um,
way the story's been created, it would be a shame to just tell you everything that happens, because that's one of the big points of the story, isn't it? It is kind of
yeah.
a good twisty turny excitement fest set in a time period that you're probably not used to seeing your superheroes in.
So without, as I said, without giving away bits and pieces, what are your overalls on the story as a whole and how it looks? Because for me, I think this is fucking stunning visually.
I wondered when I was looking at it whether I was kind of Andy Kuberted out, and I know Kuberted isn't a word, but I'm going to make it a word. Because I think you're right. I mean, looking at all the panels, I think they are great. He's a fantastic artist. Um, I don't know though. I wasn't wowed by the art. But I think it probably
Okay.
is really wow. You know, I think someone coming to this who hasn't seen loads of his stuff before might be more impressed. It's a horrible kind of criticism, isn't it? Because I'm almost kind of going, yeah, he's brilliant, but because I've seen him be brilliant before, it didn't impress me as much. And
Yeah.
yeah,
See,
I think it left me a little bit cold from that regard. And as I say, I think some of the renditions, despite making them slightly changed because of the time period, I think I've seen him draw a lot of those characters before. And yeah, I don't know, it just didn't have that pop wow factor for me, I don't think.
okay. So, because for me, what I fucking loved about it is the way that none of them look out of place. So, not to say who, but there are returns in this where they have their moments where they look like the more recognizable look, but yet still done in a way
Yeah, with a
that
1602
fits the
tint, let's
fucking
say.
that
Yeah,
sits the top fits the time.
and
So it
and you're
doesn't
right. I
have
know,
that massive out of place feel that a
and
lot of
I
these sort of things do.
I can think of one specifically, and it's probably the one you're thinking of, where I just go, yeah, I'm spot on with that. Of going, you know, when this character appears, who this character is. There is no doubt in your mind who this character is, but they are not drawn like you've always seen them, but you know who it is, and yeah, it has a flavour of probably what how people would have dressed, or would have potentially been dressed in 1602. So yeah, I think there's a degree. As I say, I don't. It's hard because I realise I sound like I'm criticising. I'm not. I do think it's great. It just was kind of for me, because I think I've seen too much of his art before, and it
Yeah,
lacked that punch for me because of that. And as I say, I used the example earlier of the kind of Beast Wolverine thing, and like he draws a wonderful Wolverine. That's one thing I say about him. He's a cracking Wolverine artist and things like that. But I go, I've just seen a lot of his panels, and there was uh, nothing new for me in his art here. It felt like Kubert doing a good job with the story that he had, and that's fine. You know, that's really bloody good. It's better than what most people can do. But
yeah.
yeah,
And with the story again, without dropping dropping bombs, um, I liked it. I really enjoyed this because, as I said, most of the time when you get a out of time or different era pieces, they usually seem a little bit ham-fisted, and it's usually our heroes from now with everything they know from
yeah,
now being then.
like
Whereas,
pretending, putting on a cloak and pretending that they're from that time rather than
yeah,
actually being from that time. Yeah,
whereas with this, how it's written and the story beats and how it goes, you really do believe that these are the 1602 versions of them in their own time. It's just one of those of, ooh, have their ancestors in 400-500 years
Yeah.
turn out to be as we know them,
And yeah, and
because
then look
they're
look the
because of
same
their
and have
great
the
great
same name.
great
Yeah,
great
yeah,
great great granddad
yeah.
sort of things. So yeah, I really really enjoyed it. I love the reveals. I all the reveals are really well done. Um, I mean, they all work and they all make sense. And the it's hard to do without saying what it's like you when
Yeah.
you were talking about Eternals last week.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to pick up, one of the things that really struck out for me, was, and bear with us on this because this might sound a bit odd, but bearing in mind it's a story of familiar characters,
mm,
but in the time of 1602. But as you say, not time travelled into 1602. They are 1602, and these are the characters. I think this would be a great. We've talked about starting points in a couple of episodes. I think this would be a great starting point for someone to come into the Marvel universe. Now, bearing in mind, it
yeah,
has no direct relationship to the Marvel universe proper, let's say the monthly comic books, but I think you get a really nice kind of rendition of a load of them. By the end of this story, kind of what Nick Fury's character's like. You don't see him modern in Shield and things like that. You get an idea of what Stephen Strange is like. You get an idea of what Peter Parquois is like. I will keep saying that because I like saying Parquois. You get an idea of what the kind of the X-Men are there to do in the Marvel universe. So I think it is actually a really good intro, and it surprised me because like Neil Gaiman from, I don't know, my understanding of Sandman, and I'll stick to his comic stuff rather than his TV and his books, is that Sandman's known for him taking a lesser known character. I say a lesser known character, actually making a different version of a lesser known character and spinning this massive kind of story and universe out of it his own. Whereas obviously with this, he is playing much more with the toys that
yeah,
they are putting it in a different setting. And yeah, I think I would quite happily put this in the hands of maybe someone who's just watched the movies and wants to kind of, we've said on some of the other where to start. God, like for even a particular character, there are thousands and upon thousands. So if you go, well, where would you start with a Marvel universe? God, even more so, where do you start? Whereas I go,
yeah,
this is a singular story that you could just say to someone, have a read of this. And if you like any of the characters you see in this, or you resonate with some more than others, they are kind of based off the archetypes of what the character is. So, like, say, if you like Matthew Murdock in this, you go, okay, then here is some Daredevil, but here is probably, well, based off of what we see in this, probably here is a bit more of the superhero-y side of Daredevil. We probably won't land you in the Frank Miller Daredevil. We'll build you up with him being a bit more of a crusader of the night, jumping from rooftops, and then we'll smash you in the face with Frank Miller Daredevil, and it will knock your socks off. So yeah, I think it had a real surprise for me. But yeah, I would definitely say for those who maybe aren't so adept with the Marvel universe, jump on this. I think it's a
yeah,
good entry point.
yeah. I concur 100% with that. Didn't think about it until you said it, but yeah, you're right. Strange, Fury, X-Men, Daredevil,
Peter
uh,
Parquois,
Peter Parquois, uh, Wanda, Quicksilver,
uh, Von
they,
Doom.
Von
Yeah,
Doom. They are all still them, but
yeah,
and are, we've said that the Fantastic Four is, we can
yeah.
reveal that they are still
Ooh,
as they are in other Fantastic Four stuff. It is, as you say, a perfect intro to
yeah,
an array of characters that
and
in
I think sorry,
most of them are in small enough chunks that
yeah,
you're not going to get overkill with them. but it's enough of everyone to go, I like them. I'll go and read some more of that. Or I didn't like them so much. I'll leave them to one
Yeah,
side.
what you just said about bite-sized chunks, I think you get base versions of the characters. But when I say base, I don't mean basic. Like, this isn't written by an untalented writer who just goes, right, what's the one thing everyone knows about this character? Do it. I think he delivers you what is maybe even going back to probably the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby-esque introduction to most of those characters. He gives you those versions of it, so that
Yeah.
you can kind of go, okay, I now understand who this character is, and probably what their motivations would be. And as I say, opens you up to a plethora of opens you up to an Amazon wish list full of trade paperbacks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, as we can probably say, both of us really fucking enjoyed this. Did you not?
This is the dark side of the coin. I wanted you to kind of go a little bit further because I didn't want to kind of stamp all over it. But I'm going to say, as much as I think this is a brilliant introduction, and I do think Andy Kubert's a great artist, and I do think Neil Gaiman's a great writer. Because, as I say, TV stuff I've seen of his, movie stuff I've seen of his, books I've seen of his, and I think, unlike Bob the Builder, trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. Lots of people bought the Bob the Builder song, and it was shit. Whereas, so I'm not saying this, but Sandman sold so well in the comic community that as much as it doesn't resonate with me, I cannot dispute it must be great, because
Yeah.
I don't think it would. So I don't think it's a populist thing that made it sell as well as it did. I think it's the quality of it. So yeah, I don't fault it, and I think as I said, I think he crafts a really good book for new readers. I think, as you say, like, without getting spoilery, there's twists and turns. There is a beginning and an end, and everything that happens in between. I think he knew, because he already had the beginning and end. And you can say that about a lot of stuff, but I don't think this was something that was kind of written on the fly. So I think he knew the story he wanted to tell. I think he knew how he wanted to tell it. So I kind of don't have any criticisms of it. All of that is positive. I will say, I found it a bit boring. Now, when I say I
Okay.
found it a bit boring, I think because I've spent so many years reading these characters, I think because I was getting the base versions of them, and a lot of the twists and stuff were twists that I'd kind of seen numerous times before in other guises, in other comic books. And funny enough, I was talking to my missus about it before we did the show, and I said, I hate going on and saying I don't like something. This is not the Renaissance Men podcast where I relish in pulling up all the shit we have to experience on that. But like, I don't like criticizing something that's good, and I don't like saying. But I think I want it to be clear. In no way am I saying it's bad. I think it is really good. It just didn't do a lot for me. Is the honest truth, and I
Okay.
think maybe it didn't feel like I was its target audience, and I feel like my oversaturation in the Marvel universe probably impacted how good and how impactful. So some of those story beats that happen, some of those twists and turns that happen, as much as it's a good story and they're laid for you to get there, some of them I was there on the first panel I saw someone, and I'm like, so the hits didn't hit me so hard. Does that make sense? Or am I just being
Yeah.
a
So
dick?
it does make sense. Obviously, it's like what we said about June when we were talking Dune on
Yeah,
the main show. When I was like, I really enjoy it, and then the other guys were like, but it's just a bit dull and it's all this, and it's like, but it's because it's all been done before.
yeah,
But this was the one that did it first.
yeah,
Basically, it's the same thing but the other way around, where it's
yeah.
you've seen this all before because it's all been done before. So coming into it as the one that hasn't seen these tropes, fucking loved it.
Yeah,
Loved all the reveals, loved the twists, loved all those weird and wonderful little beats that it has. But I reckon if I'd have been there and the same as you, if I'd have been there and read it all before and seen it all before, would it have been as impactful? Probably not.
well, and I think, like we've said on other things, I think having seen it done before isn't always a death knell for something. I think you can do it so well that, I mean, God, like, there's that argument that every story is pretty, what's it, about 4 or 5 stories and everything's a repeat. But And as I say, I don't want this to be a criticism of it because I think it's done well, but I think it's just what I think Neil Gaiman does fantastically well here. And again, I'm going to go back to I would recommend this as an introduction to for anyone. I really would. And to be honest, I think for a lot of people who maybe even have a bit more experience, I would say it's still a good introduction, or it's still a good sort of story. I think it's only really people who maybe again have oversaturated in it. But I think what Gaiman does really well here is he. It's no mistake that I mentioned like the base versions and the Stanley Jack Kirby-esque kind of, and back to the Roy Thomases and things like that, where I think that's what probably makes Gaiman such a brilliant writer. Is I think he absolutely knew what he was doing here. I think this is almost a love letter to those, but I think he probably didn't want to just come in and go, oh, let's set a story in the 60s and me retell the origin of the Marvel universe. He's gone, I have an interest in historical stuff. We see it in a lot of his writing, and I think he has an interest in kind of the religious side as he leans into the Pope stuff. So I think he said, can I take your toys and can I put them in this setting and can I tell almost my origins for these characters? And he did it, and I think he did it really, really well. As I say, just for me, like if I had to, I know we don't do scores on here, but like maybe to get across kind of feel about it is, for me, I think it's probably an 8 out of 10 comic, but it was about a 5 out of 10 for me, if that makes sense. Like I think there's it's better than my experience of it.
So I think it's one of those, as you've said, if you are new, definitely.
No. The Who Teletubbies, if anyone remembers that.
Yeah, so if you're the Hoover from Teletubbies, then it's a definite.
Oh, definitely.
If you're like me, that's either slightly lapsed reader or wasn't the Marvel boy, so hasn't read a fuck ton of Marvel, perfect. I think if you are Marvel fanboy and sitting there with a box full of every issue from ever of everything,
be jacking my job in tomorrow, mate. If I did.
Then not so much, but you'll enjoy it, but it won't be as impactful.
Yeah.
But as I said, both of us recommend it.
Yeah, definitely worth a read.
Get on it.
And for anyone who's watching this who has read it, let us know kind of what you thought about it, or if you choose to read it based off of this, then let us know what you thought about it. I mean, again, we're always interested to kind of know. I mean, this is lovely, isn't it? Like we get to talk comics, which is we say every week on this now, and I will stop saying this. Boy, I bloody love it, but it's still such a novelty. I bloody love it. But yeah, I mean, I think partly as we will say, like we'd recommend something or we wouldn't recommend something. I guess it is kind of nice to know what other people think of it. I mean, certainly, I mean, we're reading it. I'm trying to think. I think it was. God, I should have checked this beforehand. Published in. Bear with.
02, I think.
Yeah. So we're looking at like kind of 20 years on. So, and I was reading at the time, and I think it got a lot of buzz at the time because it was Gaiman coming to Marvel, and I think Gaiman had not really been doing a lot of comic works, so it had a lot of buzz. I'll be honest, I don't really remember how it reviewed and what its reception was. I think it was good, but don't quote me on that. But I think it again got was quite critically acclaimed while it was coming out. But 20 years is a long time in anything, and I think some of the interesting things about this is going back to something that was crafted 20 years ago and go, does it hold up? Now, I think the fact that both of us are saying we'd hand it over to someone to read today, I think that says something about how well it's aged, and partly maybe that's because of the era that it's set in. The comic might be 20 years old, but it's set in an era 400 years ago. So it probably makes it somewhat timeless from that because you're feeling like you're getting a historical story here. So, but yeah, anyone who's read it or reads it, give us a shout and let us know what you thought of it.
So, comments below. Do them now. Also, like and subscribe and ring bells. So that is this for this week. Next week we are back with Visions Talk.
And I promise next week I'm going to speak a lot less because I need to hear what this boy thinks of Vision.
But you're leading that one, and I'm just going to come in with all my opinions on it. So until next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.